Next thing we're going to add to our blog is a dynamic sidebar. So a dynamic sidebar is one where we'll take a look at it in a moment, where in the admin you can slide and different widgets around and add things in different locations. Now a sidebar does not have to be a sidebar. A sidebar can be located anywhere on the site. And there are some theme frameworks where there might be half a dozen different, well, you could also call them widget areas, where you can move and position different elements on the page. The first step is to register the sidebar. So here's the code reference, and we can look. Let's look for an implementation example. And let's drop this into our functions file. And you can see the hook that it's loading is called widgets init. And then here is the functions file. And let's call this and now we'll change the name of it to blog sidebar. I'll make the ID It's interesting because some of these IDs, some of them don't do well with uppercase letters. Some of them don't like dashes. So one thing you can do is you can look at the examples, and if the examples don't show uppercase letters, it's probably a good idea to kind of imitate how the example is done. Description. Shown in the blog sidebar. Okay, and then there's a bunch of arguments. I'm just going to leave the defaults in for now. You can see the different arguments that it allows. They are all generally have to do with the appearance or they add classes and IDs and this type of thing. Okay, and now that I've added this, I've registered the sidebar, now I have this widgets feature available to me. Here it is, my blog sidebar I just created. And let's just start dragging some stuff in. So there's a bunch of widgets that come with WordPress built in. Well, you could call it anything you want. I'll say search mobile cache. Okay. There are plugins that can, there are many plugins that will add additional widgets, calendars, and all kind, video players, all kinds of things that can be added, lots of different ways in which this feature can be extended. So we want to search, and let's put in categories. Okay, and let's see if we can find an archive by date. Let's put that in here. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to position this sidebar using Dynamic Sidebar, and you'll see you can take either an ID or a string. So let's go back to my blog landing page template, and let's make two containers. So I'm going to use the Bootstrap Grid system, and I'm going to make a div called class equals row. And then we have div class equals, and let's just say col dash md, let's say 8. And then we'll do col dash sm. Actually, let's do it like this. Col lg large 8, col dash md 6, and col sm dash 12. Okay, and now this whole section is going to be in that first column. I got to make sure I don't have any stray div tags. So I have div row. No, I don't want a row. I don't want a div there. I don't want a div here. Instead, I want them both at the bottom here. And then let's add another column here. Now this is going to be the inversion, and if you recall, Bootstrap uses a 12-point grid system, so the inverse of 8 will be 4, the inverse of 6 will be 6, and 12 will be 12, because 12 is just full width. Okay, let's give that a whirl, and let's implement the dynamic sidebar. Let's look at what implementations are recommended. Now, interesting, something you'll note here in the implementation is how it has a UL wrapper. So that would imply that what this dynamic sidebar is going to be outputting are list items, but not actually the outer wrapper. I'm going to take the ID that I just made and stick it in here, and we'll cross our fingers and hopefully we get a blog sidebar. Let's take a look. Voila, there it is. Now we probably want to do a bit of styling on this because this is not looking too attractive the way it is. So it's a UL with an ID of sidebar. Oops. So that's the first thing we want to do. Or let's do I also want all lists inside of that list to have no list style. And then we'll say margin 0, padding 0. Okay, so this gives us a nice default to start with. Okay, and I'll transfer that to my style sheet. Okay, I feel like I actually need some kind of ID on this div here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this markup a little bit here. So instead of putting the ID on the list item, I'm going to put it on the column. Actually, that simplifies this a little bit, because actually all I need to do is just this, and we should be back in shape. Nope. There we go. Just needed a refresh. You might notice I click on this button all the time. This is a clear cache extension that I've added to Chrome, and every time I click this button, it clears the cache. You can also do hard reload. There's also empty cache and hard reload. There's those options too. Okay, so on my sidebar, let's see what happens if I add a little padding on there. Okay, and then let's stop. This looks pretty big. So this is 0.2, this is 2 rem. I think I like 1.5 rem better. You just got to transverse the DOM that's generated by the code. Okay, that looks like a good start. Let's figure out why I'm not getting any margin under this under the search feature. Oh, interesting. I applied it on the list. What I should have applied it on was the list item. Let's try this. Nope. There we go, that's looking better. It feels like this is too cozy on top here, but before I update it, I want to check out the other pages, make sure it looks the same on all the pages. Yeah, that looks about, it's the same issue on all the pages. Oops. You have to be careful that you don't just adjust styles for one page, but you're paying attention to how they affect every page on the site. Okay, well that's looking quite a bit better. This is a label. I don't like the way this button looks on a new line like that. That looks pretty funky. So let's try making this label block element. There we go. That's quite a bit better. Okay, well now I wouldn't want to use just this class because it's not specific enough. So I want to make sure, I'm going to pull this search form ID and make sure that I'm only modifying this search field when it occurs inside of the search form.